Hi guys and welcome to my channel. My name is Geneva and in this video, which is my first video, I'll be speaking to you about polycystic ovarian syndrome and prediabetes, and specifically how to beat prediabetes and how to lose weight effectively with these conditions. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about myself and who I am, and um, maybe how I know how to do these things, so that you can trust me in this process. So my name is Geneva. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome at 16 years old, but I suffered from it since way before that. I lost 140 pounds during the course of 3 years. And through a lot of trial and error, I have figured out the key to the most effective way of controlling hormones and PCOS symptoms, as well as reducing the chances of developing prediabetes without medication, as well as being on medication and things of that sort, and when medication is necessary. So I guess I'll explain my history first, and the reason why I'm going to do that, I'm not going to go into way too much detail, but I'm going to explain my history just so that if you guys see yourselves in that, then you can continue watching the video. So first of all, I want to explain that polycystic ovarian syndrome, there's multiple types, but mainly what it is that it's a hormonal dysfunction. So it's either that there's too many androgen hormones in the female body, or there's a disruption of androgen hormones in the female body and less estrogen in the female body, or more, or maybe less progesterone, things of that sort. And this causes symptoms such as excessive hair, irregular periods, spike of insulin, insulin resistance, things of that sort, and then can lead to things like type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, and being overweight, and that's when it can become dangerous. So that's the gist of polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's easiest to get diagnosed when you get an ultrasound, a pelvic ultrasound, and they can see that there are extra cysts that have either bursted on the ovaries. All women have cysts on ovaries. However, I think the main difference is that there are excessive cysts, I believe, and usually they erupt and they cause pain, and then there's the hormone disruption. That's what causes the polycystic ovarian syndrome, I believe. If not, I think one can have the polycystic ovarian syndrome without the ovarian cysts, but the disruption of hormones, and then that can cause symptoms as well. So you don't necessarily need to have the ovarian cysts. In my case, when I was 12 years old, I had to have an ovary removed because I had a very big ovarian cyst torsioned around my ovary. So having an ovary removed at the age of 12 caused a huge shift in my hormones, and by the age of like 13, I was already 250 pounds at, give or take, 5'6". By 14 years old, I might have been 5'7" or something like that. So yeah. And I wasn't formally diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome at that point yet. I just assumed that it was the ovarian cyst and that was it. And I was fine, you know. I was just very heavily overweight or morbidly obese, I guess you can say, for my age around then. And I had struggled with mental health issues, which is another symptom of polycystic ovarian syndrome. Of course, hormones affect your neurotransmitters. That being said, a lot of women with PCOS struggle with mental health issues. So, and teenagers in general suffer from mental health issues because your neurotransmitters are trying to regulate themselves, especially serotonin and dopamine. So if you're a teenager watching this, don't worry, it'll get better once you grow up. Your frontal lobe is still growing. But anyways, so I was struggling with that. But at the age of 16, I found myself having the same kind of pain again around my pelvis, So I went to have an explorative surgery. Anyways, it was a laparoscopy, and they found that I had endometriosis, which is another topic, not for this video. Endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome, and the cysts had bursted and caused some hemorrhaging on the other ovary. They didn't remove the other ovary because they wanted to save that in case I wanted to have children in the future, which leads me to my other point, infertility. That's another major problem of polycystic ovarian syndrome. It can potentially be a problem. So, at that point I was diagnosed with PCOS, and which was kind of a relief. I kind of understood where the depression was coming from, where the overweight was coming from, and I was also diagnosed with prediabetes, which was a little bit terrifying because I didn't want to become diabetic, since type 2 diabetes is something you really don't want to have. It's very scary. It leads to all kinds of other diseases. So from then on, your action, if you are pre-diabetic, is to really get your blood sugars in check, right? That's really what you want to do. And I think the big question here is how to do it. And doctors will often tell you that you need to lose about 5% of your body weight to get rid of that diagnosis, which is true. Here's the issue. It's how you do it. So you can lose 5% of your body fat, no problem. But it's how you do it that is really the key to maintaining your hormonal health, right? And this is the gist of the video. I really want to show my audience that you can lose weight in an effective way without struggling, without having this mentally taxing, process, overweight everything that you do, being depressed about it, being like, oh shit, like I always have to be careful about what I eat. This is so sucky. Like I always have to exercise. This is so terrible. It doesn't have to be that way. A lot of doctors aren't educated in nutrition. So this is where it can cause ambiguity in how to lose weight. And a lot of places online will tell you to drop your calories way too low, way too quickly. So this is what you have to be careful with, and I want you to steer away from. And this is also a mistake that I made. So initially, that's what it was. I wanted to drop my calories pretty low so I can lose weight as quickly as possible to steer away from that diagnosis. I want to mention that around this time, the pain never went away, so I was also diagnosed with chronic pelvic pain. I didn't know how to deal with it, especially as a teenager. You're dealing with mental health issues. So especially dealing with that, the mental health issues made the pain worse, and that's very possible. It's a top-down notion of pain, but again, that's for another video. I can make a separate video on chronic pain. So I used medication like narcotic medication and analgesic medication to cope with that, which also made me gain weight. So yeah, I gained a lot of weight, and I also developed very restrictive eating habits. This is something I don't want you to do. I went online and I wrote how to lose weight with PCOS, and the main things that you'll see are cut out sugars, all sugars, and eat about 1,200 calories a day. Those are the two things that I did. And there are some things that I agree with this, and there are some things that I do not agree with this. And I believe that it says to not eat any carbohydrates, and I actually had a doctor tell me that as well. This is wrong. What this means, this is why it's ambiguous online, is that you have to avoid simple carbohydrates, and that is true. Simple carbohydrates are refined carbohydrates. This means white table sugar, high fructose corn syrup. That's what you need to avoid, because this is what's going to spike your insulin and cause you to become pre-diabetic. What you don't want to avoid and what you want to consume are carbohydrates coming from whole foods, starches, fruits are processed differently in the body. It's a slower release of insulin. This is completely different from a simple sugar. Complex carbohydrates have fibers that your body needs, soluble fibers and insoluble fibers that your gut needs. This is going to help with your mental health too. Your gut and your brain are linked. You hear that a lot in holistic nutrition. However, if you make the mistake of cutting out carbs completely out of your diet, you are going to suffer dearly. And if you have done that, you probably already feel those effects. Am I not right? You probably miss carbohydrates. You probably feel kind of sluggish throughout your day. You're probably like, this weight loss thing is kind of like boring, like it's not as fun. I'm going to tell you how to make it that way. I struggled from eating disorders for a long time because of this. And by the time I was 18 years old, I had reached 310 pounds. Yeah, I had reached 310 pounds because of a binge eating disorder from restrictive eating and then binge eating. From all this yo-yo dieting. So at 310 pounds, I then cut my calories way too low because that's what I thought I needed to do, which you do not need to do. You really need to find out how much your body needs. Treat your body as a temple because that's what it is. Listen to your body. Don't cut your calories down to 1,200 because everybody's body is different. Maybe go see a personal trainer, someone who knows how to calculate, I think it's a BMR or something like that. Not BMI because screw that. I'll get into that a bit later. But yeah, your basal metabolic rate, that's very important to know. Online, it's a bit different for everybody. Like they'll never really know your body fat percentage and things like that. But because everybody is different, there's not one set caloric value for everybody. This is why it's important to not drop down your calories to 1,200 like the internet says. But I did that. And I developed very severe eating disorders. And I think a lot of women, this is the dark side of weight loss, that a lot of women don't talk about. So I developed like bulimia and atypical anorexia for a long time. And I had lost 100, give or take 100 pounds from struggling with that, from not eating carbohydrates and eating a lot of animal protein. So I did lose a significant amount of weight, and I was no longer pre-diabetic at first. But I didn't feel good in my body. I had developed acne. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I had very severe digestive issues from eating so much animal protein that I couldn't digest. There was no fiber in it. So I go back to the doctor because at one point I couldn't take it. My hormones were everywhere. I wasn't getting my period anymore. And after a blood test had revealed that I had become pre-diabetic again. So how is that possible if I had removed all carbohydrates out of my diet? Well, it turns out that after some research that I had done, please, this is anecdotal, but I consider that you do your research. Turns out that animal protein fat, saturated fat is what I'm alluding to, clogs the arteries and can contribute to diabetes. And after cutting out all animal protein or animal fat consumption, animal products, I became plant-based for those 2 weeks. Not necessarily that I did lose weight because I'm on a weight loss journey, but I didn't lose weight any faster than I was before. But I was no longer restricting and I was eating a lot more, and I felt liberated from my eating disorders for the first time in a long time, and I didn't feel like weight loss was a chore anymore. That's the first benefit to a plant-based diet. But the second benefit was that I got rid of my prediabetes. Eating carbohydrates coming from plants, and my digestion was phenomenal. It went back to normal in literally a week. Like, it was crazy. After being Sorry if this video is a bit much, but constipated for over 6 months. It was insane. And after those 2 weeks, I became vegan, and my mental clarity is so much better. My focus is better. My grades went up. I no longer suffer from any type of eating disorders. Weight loss is enjoyable. I don't even treat it as weight loss anymore. It's a lifestyle. As before, it was such a negative thing to think of. Maybe this is how you think of it, because it seems so daunting at first that you need to cut out all these things, when in reality you don't. All you need to do is choose your foods. And it's as simple as this. Processed, whole. Whole plant-based foods are what you want to consume. Processed foods are what you want to avoid. This cures you. The whole plant-based food will cure your PCOS and will cure your PCOS symptoms, yes. And it will get rid of your prediabetes. And I promise you, you will never feel better. My periods have become regular again, and the duration of the period and the cramping have gotten significantly better. I'm not even making that up. And you have to understand that I was terrified of becoming vegan. At first it wasn't for the veganic purposes. It was it was strictly for dietary purposes. It later became bigger than that. And maybe that'll happen for you if you try this plant-based diet. I was terrified of eating carbohydrates, and I can understand that maybe you're coming from a place where it is a little bit terrifying to eat carbohydrates, but you have to understand that these carbohydrates are processed differently in the body. They're coming from whole foods, plant-based. Plant-based whole food. It's completely different from a sugar, a high fructose corn syrup, a chemical. It's not a chemical. They contain fibers that your gut needs. Your gut needs to go to the bathroom. You need to detoxify with these. Your epithelial cells need these to regenerate. Your brain needs this to function. Your body needs these carbohydrates to function. The other stuff will kill you. That's the main difference between those two carbohydrates. And I think that's what's important. And that's the main problem with carbohydrates. It's that the simple carbohydrates are the problem, not the whole thing. And I think that's what the ambiguity between what's found on the internet is. And if you're thinking about going on a ketogenic diet, please don't do that, because you're just losing water weight at the end of the day, and you're really missing out on an entire food group, entire macronutrient. Sorry, not food group. You need all three macronutrients. Fats, yes, are very important. Carbohydrates are very important, and so are proteins. You just need to know where those sources are coming from. And my fingers, those sources should be coming from plant-based whole foods. And the thing is that you will never feel like you're dieting, because you can eat in abundance. For real, you can eat in abundance as long as they're whole plant-based foods. And you will lose weight. You will lose your 5%, that 5% of your body fat. You will get rid of your prediabetes. And I'm not even kidding. You'll never feel better. You'll have that mental clarity. You're going to perform well in your work and your schooling. Your mental health will feel amazing. Your digestion will get back on track. Just test it out. Test it out for a week. See what gives. And then push yourself. I'm going to leave my Instagram down below. There you can see my progress pictures, things of that sort. I leave all kinds of plant-based recipes down there. I'm a psychology student in undergrad. I'm going to be doing graduate school soon, but I'm also becoming certified in plant-based nutrition, so that hopefully soon I can coach some of you guys in plant-based nutrition to regulate your hormonal issues. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope this video served you well. I'm glad that it found you, so have a great day.